Welcome, and thanks for tuning in. Start off with a disclaimer here. I am not a scholar. I do not claim to be an expert. I also do not claim to be affiliated with any religion. I have found great value in the freedom of my own exploration of source, and I am grateful for that. I'm just living my life and having fun with this information. And I'm thankful I was open to this information and felt I wanted to offer it to anyone that wanted to listen. So I've cut a lot of stuff out of my notes as to hopefully help make this shorter and more palatable. I hope I didn't remove too much information. I don't want to confuse people. But, it all makes sense in my mind, so... Let's see. Also, this talk, we'll call it, is for entertainment purposes only. And with that said, I hope you really enjoyed my interpretation of the Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel of Thomas, the Bible, other religions, and other ancient manuscripts from all over the world are more closely related than we know. If we take a step back from the overwhelming experience of the 3D world and calm our mind, our body, and our heart, if we look within for the source which gives us life and consciousness, we will begin to discover how we are all divinely connected. The Gospel of Thomas, or teachings of Jesus, led us here. And during my process of gathering and sifting through information, two things stuck out for me. So I wanted to explore them a little more. Both things have to do with the regional area that Jesus came from. So let's start there. The Israelites came on the scene around 1200 BCE, before the Common Era. I did find some other people suggesting 2000 BCE, but the consensus seemed like 1200 BCE. I believe coming from the Damascus area, which Damascus to Cairo is only about an 8 days walk. I assume faster on a boat in the Mediterranean Sea, but I don't know enough about sailing in that era. Egypt came on the scene around 6000 BCE, and some think possibly up to 7500 BCE. Either way, a group of people related to the Egyptians had been living in that area for a very long time. Of course, over thousands of years, Egyptian leadership changed directions many times over. By the time Jesus is born, Egypt is about 2,500 years past its quote-unquote golden days, slowly coming out of the Ptolemaic period and now entering into the Roman rule. Prior to the Ptolemaic period, it's probably safe to say that greater surrounding region were heavily influenced by Egyptian culture and religion for like 4,000 years. So Jesus' ancestors, dating back to 1200 BCE, were probably heavily influenced by Egypt, whether they liked it or not. So when Jesus is supposedly born, we are told King Herod wanted to kill Jesus. So Jesus' parentals fled to Egypt for safety. With the Ptolemaic era ending or lasting a few hundred years, and the Romans now taking the helm, I'm going to assume that the Egyptians may have felt it necessary to preserve their older religious history and possibly start an underground movement, a revival of ancient knowledge, if you will. And Jesus's parents would have experiences firsthand, which personally I think is pretty cool. So the first thing that stuck out at me was the regional influence that Egypt had for thousands of years, and that Jesus's family and Jesus himself were probably influenced culturally and religiously by the Egyptians. I wanted to add a quick side note about the region before we move on. Did you know that Göbekli Tepe, a megalithic site located in modern-day Turkey, built around 9000 BCE, is only an 8 days walk to Nazareth? And Göbekli Tepe is only an 8 days walk to Baghdad in modern-day Iraq. It's a 15 days walk to Qam al-Amar in Egypt. Hopefully I said that good enough for you to understand. And it's a 39 days walk to Punjab in India. The interesting thing to me about Göbekli Tepe is that it's not really mentioned in ancient writings. And I know going back that far in time, there wasn't too much writing done in those periods, but I'm more or less talking about thousands of years afterwards. I'm surprised that a lot of ancient cultures didn't write more about it. Mainly because Göbekli Tepe is located in an area that saw its fair share of migrating travelers for over thousands of years. And I would think a megalithic site would be pretty popular, either due to a powerful civilization being there, or due to trading with this culture, or just a place to pilgrimage to. I mean, personally, I want to go check it out, and I'm sure people, since it's been built, have probably wanted to go check it out. I personally thought it seemed strange that Göbekli Tepe wasn't a main staple in ancient pop culture. All right, back to the second thing that stuck out at me when I was doing this researchy stuff. In Egypt, around 3000 BCE, we find Horus. Horus was supposedly born on December 25th from a virgin. And at the time, there was a star in the eastern sky. And he was adorned by 3 kings. He gained enough knowledge to be able to teach others around the age of 12 years of age, and he participated in baptismal practices and had 12 disciples. In Persia, around 1200 BCE, we find Mithra. Mithra was born from a virgin on December 25th, performed miracles, had 12 disciples, died and was resurrected after 3 days. During that same time period of 1200 BCE in Greece, we find Attis. Attis was born on December 25th from a virgin, was crucified, and died, and 3 days afterwards was resurrected. In India, around 900 BCE, we find Krishna. who was born from a virgin with a star in the eastern sky. Krishna performed miracles and was resurrected. We head back to Greece around 500 BCE. We find Dionysus. Dionysus was born on December 25th from a virgin, performed miracles, was resurrected, and was also referred to as the King of Kings and the Alpha and Omega. That's a lot of characters with similar roles, hundreds and thousands of years before Jesus arrives on the scene. And there still might be more to discover, but that is not the purpose of this conversation. I want to make sure I say here that I did not bring attention to this group of religious characters to disregard their importance or to expose them as some sort of devious plot for temples to take your money and control your mind. Although history has shown that a few factions have done this. What I think is that this is a great example of how knowledge and information migrates and got traded amongst different cultures throughout the ages. We know that ancient cultures migrated with their stories, and they also traveled within their own regions with their stories to help preserve them. A great example of this is the Aboriginal people in Australia. They go back as far as 65,000 years ago, well before the Australian landmass separated from the mainland. The Aborigines have a rich culture of what they call footprints of the ancestors, or dreaming tracks, which is basically using time and travel, landmarks and places, etc., to orally instill and remember ancient knowledge and history in order to preserve it and pass it down to the next generation. This technique helps ensure the accuracy of the information. The journey itself becomes part of the oral book and the library of knowledge. So speaking of ancient knowledge being passed down, I think we should use some ourselves and overlay some on what we're talking about and help us broaden how we view points in time with this information. So the ancient knowledge we will be bringing in to overlay is the ancient system of the Yuga. It'll bring new light to the situation. And the Yugas have recently been brought back into our awareness by, let me try to say this name here, Swami Sri Yukteswari Jiri. And he brought this into our awareness not too long ago. In the grand scheme of things, very recently. So the Yugas are almost like a cycle of 3D universal duality. Of course, put in place to help facilitate some of the underlining structure of the lessons we are here to experience for our collective soul expansion. For a deep dive into the Yugas, there are plenty of great books and videos to check out. You shouldn't have any issue finding some fun and interesting stuff on it, and I highly recommend you go play with that information. Go check it out. All right, so there seems to be two different flavors of the Yuga cycles. There is a short form, which lasts about 24,000 years, and there is a long form lasting about 4,320,000 years. As of now, it seems like, depending on who taught you and where you came from is kind of what you believe to be the correct one. It seems modern day society, people tend to lean towards accepting the short form, probably because it seems easier for us to perceive. And no doubt it does make sense and helps put time into perspective. I personally think that both are correct. The short form and the long form both exist together. It is the macrocosm and the microcosm working in unison as part of the construct of this physical plane. The duality of the yuga, or the yuga cycle, is high frequency and low frequency, or positive and negative. Similar to the ideas mentioned in the interpretation of the Gospel Thomas, positive and negative, joy and despair. Right now, on the short form yuga, we have just recently come out of the lowest frequency era, a time of negativity. And it's going to take us a long time to shake off that energy and work our way into a more neutral place, a more balanced state, before we keep moving into a higher frequency state, or different periods of the yuga cycle. So on our last descending aspect of the short yuga system, approximately, I'll say, 7,000 BCE to 100 AD, 100 CE. That's a good time frame for that. So this last descending aspect, it seemed it became necessary for civilizations to start writing down their knowledge, because the oral traditions were not cutting it anymore. And all cultures pass down knowledge orally. And because of this, it can be difficult to pinpoint timelines with accuracy. Take, for example, the Vedas. The Rig Veda was written around 1500 BCE. But it is suggested that the knowledge has been passed down orally since possibly 10,000 BCE. So 10,000 BCE, give or take 3,000 to 4,000 years, seems to hold a lot of secrets. And it keeps popping up in a lot of the information I personally was looking into. It also seems that during this period of like 10,000 BCE-ish, there was a lot of available knowledge. And shortly after this period, there looks like there was probably mass migrations. And then shortly after the mass migrations, information started slowly fading away. And speaking of migrations, on another side note here, when I was playing with this information, I came across images of totems from all over the world. And I always loved ancient art and culture. And I know of totems, of course. I didn't know there were so many totems all over the world. And I was a little surprised at how similar a lot of these designs were. And in some cases, I couldn't really tell without doing a deeper dive if they were Native American, Aboriginal, Polynesian, Egyptian, Mayan, African, or Indian. It was quite remarkable, and the artwork was quite amazing. All right, so the next higher frequency era, or Satya period, in the short form cycle will be from 7,700 CE to 17,300 CE, with its peak around 12,500 CE. In the long form cycle, from my calculations, the next high frequency era will be in about 300,500 years. And my guess is that one in particular is going to be off the chain for sure. And maybe we will be living in a world of rainbows, unicorns, and lollipops. And I will definitely be having a party at my place for sure. Don't forget to RSVP. To me, it seems like the most exciting and progressive things tend to happen within the high frequency or Satya state ages. Of course, I cannot say for certain, and I do not have definitive proof. But come on, I'm just some guy on YouTube. I'm not the head of MIT, I'm not the head of Cambridge, I'm not the head of the CERN facility. I don't have the proper people and tools at my disposal to have extremely deep dives. And I feel, and I know a lot of scholars will not agree with me on this one, but I feel most of the megalithic structures were built during a Satya Yuga period. And most evolutionary jumps were made during these high frequency periods. And it wouldn't surprise me if most major and important earth changes happened during a Satya period. And until science can say definitively, without a doubt, and have precise dates for megalithic structures, I feel these are all open cases, and we should look at all the information and view them all from multiple perspectives. All right, so if we look at the visual aid timeline here, hopefully you can see it. Most major events happen around a Satya period. From cave paintings to Homo sapiens, Australopithecus to chimpanzees, gorillas to orangutans, all these are coming on the scene in or around these periods of these periods of time. I want us to go back even farther, but first I also want to mention that all religions and cultures have a beginning or creation story, and most seem kind of similar. They all talk about it being dark and formless, which, by the way, like the totems, I thought was pretty cool that they were all fairly similar. Personally, I'm not sure if I would have answered dark and formless, mainly because I've only ever known us having the sun come out daily or rise daily. And I've always only seen matter or stuff everywhere. So it's pretty, to me, somewhat surprising that one of the underlining similarities is that this era being dark and formless. And most cultures also spoke of, during this time, they talked about spirits moving around when it was dark and formless. And they moved around throughout this whole process up until and through the physical creation. And millions of years later, except for the spirit part, science agrees. Yes, dark and formless before the Big Bang sounds about right. Now, the writings about pre-creation for some of these cultures are fairly short in word count, but they describe the dark and formlessness turning into some kind of manifestation. It took a long duration of time for this to happen. So take, for example, even in the Old Testament, Genesis 2:4, it uses the words like generations or history to describe 6 days of the creation process. In the New Testament, 2 Peter 3:8, it suggests that that one day for God is like 1,000 years for Earth. And side note, I've checked out a lot of creation stories over my lifetime, and the most recent one was the creation story of the Dene, a North American indigenous tribe. And I just want to say I give that story 2 thumbs up. Around 15 billion years ago, the Milky Way galaxy started to form. 10.4 billion years after that, the Earth, Sun, and the rest of our solar system formed and came into existence. If we take the biblical idea of the 6 days and we overlay it with the macro yuga, we can use one full macro yuga cycle to represent one full day. So 6 days would then approximately be 26 million years. And a quick search on the internet shows that scientists believe the forming of the Earth took possibly 20 million years, which is super close to the 26 million number we got for the 6 days, or 6 full yuga cycles. Oddly enough, because things are strange and elusive at times, I wanted to see what it looked like if I took those 6 days and turned it into 6 periods or 6 ages within a full macro yuga cycle. Depending on which period you started counting from, 6 days from where I started from equaled 2.8 million years. In another quick search on the internet about the formation of Earth, I found an article saying that recently some scientists have had findings suggesting that it may have only taken around 3 million years for the Earth to fully form. So which is it? 20 million-ish or 3 million-ish? We may never know for sure. And why did both sets of yuga numbers line up so nicely? Again, I don't know. But sometimes things are just kind of strange and elusive. However, because both lined up so nicely, it makes me feel we are on the right track. So I'm intrigued about this whole formation or creation period. It definitely sounds similar to the concepts within the interpretation of the Gospel of Thomas, where prior to this incarnation, our true self is completely aware of its part, that it is part of the original source. So a fun way to put it would be, it's like one day God, us, were traveling around through space, maybe migrating through space. And God said, "Whoa, check out that dark, open, formless area over there. It's got potential. You see, I got this idea. I'm going to send us, you, all to school and get you educated. So let us set up shop here." And so we did. But then what? Did the primates, pre-Homo sapiens, and eventually cave people just orally start passing down the knowledge and description of what pre-Earth and pre-solar system look like? I mean, I suppose it's possible, because in this version of me right now, this physical form, it has not physically experienced a higher frequency satya period, whereas it seems primates and pre-Homo sapiens did get to experience this high frequency period. The macro and the micro yuga effect also started getting me thinking about how modern day society lives versus how older tribal cultures live in today's societies. The indigenous cultures seem to be more secluded, more protective of cultural knowledge, more protective of their heritage, etc. It's very distinct and different than what modern day society looks like and acts. So my question to myself, could they subtly be living on a different timeline or different dimension? Maybe their timeline is more closely linked to the macrocosm yuga system cycle, while modern day society is more closely linked to the micro yuga cycle system. Both interacting together simultaneously with source as the common denominator, with each group playing its role in duality to bring value and expansion to the whole. Let us, see what I did there? Let us wrap up this exploration of the interpretation of the Gospel of Thomas and this sidebar Yuga talk. I believe if you filter through these ancient concepts and you search deep within yourself, you will find that we are getting closer to the cradle of quantum spirituality. There is an original truth hidden within all of us, an original story which contains the true identity of the human race. Not about a particular person, but about every person. This story was passed down orally throughout the ages, and when the frequencies dropped, mankind had to write down this knowledge to preserve it for future generations. They did it to the best of their ability according to their traditions and migratory experiences, passed down from here to there and this to that until we arrive at the story of Jesus. And this story does not end at Jesus. The story is not even about Jesus. It is the lost story of us. It is the lost story of you. Eventually, long after I'm not in this body, all this information will be updated again as we move further into the positive and ascending portion of the micro-yuga cycle. This knowledge will most likely become more tangible and easier to embody for those living in the Treta and Satya periods, or these ages of time that we will eventually enter. And even prior to that, hopefully, in our lifetime, we will see some of this information become a little bit more real through new archaeological discoveries and potentially through quantum computers being brought up to speed. One day down the line, as the human race keeps elevating into new eras of consciousness, our minds will naturally and innately cultivate into highly evolved quantum conscious deliberators of action without the use of brain-computer interfaces or neural implants, which will probably just do more harm than good anyways. We all play a role in this expansion because we are all part of it. We all have this knowledge hidden within our consciousness. But our purpose here is not necessarily to access it. Our purpose here is to learn and be a part of the learning expansion. As I mentioned before, that one day all this information will be updated again, probably when we reach a new higher frequency. And in another incarnation, it might just be me who updates this information. And it could have been me that was one of the original authors of the Gospel of Thomas. I want to thank you again for your time and attention. I hope you had as much fun as I did with this thought experiment. Please take care of yourselves and show compassion to each other. Peace and much love.